Here's our slump bowl. The advantage to a slump bowl is that it's not gonna shrink and crack around the form because there's nothing in there that's preventing it from shrinking. So it should kind of shrink and separate away from the form and shouldn't be too hard to get out. And then it allows you to decorate the inside more effectively because it's supported by the outside. So what you'll want to do is clean up this rim a little bit, do some decorating on the inside, and then pop it out. Generally, you don't want to put too much decoration on the inside because depending on what the function of that bowl is, it may be hard to clean. It may get in the way of the functionality, like you got your spoon or your fork, whatever, chopsticks scraping against the texture, bits of food getting caught in there. But if it's like a jewelry bowl or something, then you could have more complex, deeper texture in there. So just thinking about the function that the bowl is going to serve and having the surface that you create work with that function. Cut right along the top here. Can make it harder to get that bowl out if you got nothing to grab onto, but I'm going to take advantage of this nice rim on the bowl and just create a real clean, pretty rim. This one took quite a bit longer to stiffen up because there's less surface area exposed. With those hump bowls, there's a lot more of that outer surface area that's going to dry out. That edge is real thick, so I'm going to shave it down a little bit. Your trimming tool is fine for this, but mine has some teeth on it, and that helps you to cut more smoothly. If it doesn't have teeth, it's more likely to gouge, like you might kind of have your tool slip a little bit and gouge in there. Once I pull the bowl out, I'll be able to pinch that rim up and thin it out, make it a little bit more graceful. It's kind of thick and chunky right now. And here's a little spot. I'll probably have to fix that more when it comes out. Just kind of rough it up in there. A little moisture. You can use my knuckle here, kind of the edge of my finger, for some more smoothing. I'm going to use this roller tool to add some texture along the upper inside of the bowl. Pushing and rolling. Pretty good. It kind of didn't make contact in the middle there, and I'll just use a tool with a soft tip on it to get some of that detail in there. You know, the back of this chip brush works nicely. And then when I'm done doing them all, I can get rid of some of that rough edge. I could even wait until it's bone dry and just kind of sand those edges, get rid of that hard edge on there. So now I want to create a line where that texture stops. This little salsa container actually works perfectly for that. And let's make sure that it's centered in there. So it needs to shift a little bit this way. That's pretty good. So now I'm going to press that in and create a line. Okay, now let's pull it out. Cool. Now I'll clean up that edge. I think that's pretty good. It doesn't need to be too complex. So now I'm ready to pull it out of the form. So I'm gonna pull away from the edge here. So by using two hands at once, I'm able to more evenly pull it away, using my fingernails a little bit. I think that's all kind of disengaged from the edge. Now hopefully it'll just plop right out. Bam, there we go. Now I'll spend a little time cleaning up the outside here. Dip my scoring tool in some water. Score these areas that need to be filled where my slab kind of wrinkled when I dropped it down in there. I'm going to roll my texture tool across the bowl, and I need to be careful because it's kind of soft and there's not any support on the inside. So remember, that's the advantage of the hump mold bowls, is that they have that structure on the inside that you can really brace against while you're adding texture. The advantage to this really organic texture is that it's okay if the edges of the tool don't line up perfectly. It's a lot more forgiving in that sense. And you can see I am distorting the shape a little bit, but it shouldn't be too much of an issue. I could do that same sort of technique I used on the inside, and then we'll measure and make sure that our plastic Tupperware is in the center. Check the back side. It's pretty good. Check this side and this side. Yeah, actually that looks pretty darn good. So we'll press it down in there. Give it a little rotation. Take it off carefully. And then we'll clean up the edges. And just since I can, we'll put it on a board and use my turntable here. So I'm going to create a nice little separation here. Rather than just making a line that indents, I want it to feel like it kind of like steps up into that, so there's sort of a change in the plane. Now I'm going to work on the transition. I want these lines from this organic texture to break up this more sort of geometric line that ends the pattern, so it kind of ends in a more interesting organic sort of way. Now I'm going to fix some of these little tears in the bottom edge, or rather what will be the top. Add a little water on those and stick it on there. Smooth it, compress it a little bit. Remember, compressing smushes all those little particles of clay together, makes them denser, makes them stronger. So now while I'm down here, I could work on a foot, and I like our cup technique, so I'm going to do that. Pretty certain that this initial circle that we made is in the right place, And so I can use that to guide the placement of this cup, and just kind of look at the cup and see if it's pointed straight up. Might have been a little off with our previous circle, like right here. I could kind of push it out a little more. And since we're not working on the wheel, it's much harder to be precise, but we kind of want to embrace some of that organic quality, know that we can't make it perfect, and just kind of allow it to have some of that handmade character to it. So now I'm going to trace this. And then I'll score the inside of that. So we know that the diameter of this cup is about 2 3/4 inches, which is about 1/3 the diameter of this bowl. So we've already checked that relationship, and we know that proportionally this is going to be the right size foot for this bowl. Remember, a wider foot might not look as graceful, but it's going to give it stability. And we want this to be functional, we want it to be stable. So I moisten this. It's nice and goopy now. It's ready to have a slab attached to. Sometimes it's nice to let it just sit with that water on it, let that water kind of soak in. And now I can roll a coil, or I like that technique where you just use a slab if you have a little bit of slab left over from another project, or a slab waiting to go on another project, but making sure that you have a nice straight edge. And then I'll just use this slab to create my foot, and then once I get it on there, I'll round it out some more. So this slab is kind of leather hard, so I want to be careful not to make it crack by how I bend it. Cut off a little, just cut off both ends here just so we know that they're clean. And I want to get it a little tighter, tighter, tighter. Good, good, good. Okay, now let's just take a look on here. See how well that's gonna fit. Good. Oh yeah, that's gonna fit real nice. And then I'm gonna cut it here. Now those ends line up real nice. Made sure that it fit on here with the line right there, and I cut through so those ends would come together well. So now I'm gonna score it. Moisten it. Score, score, score. Put it on there, and then make sure that I can see this line. Because if I can use that line as a guide, then I know it's going on here right where it needs to be. Looks like it's stretched just a little bit. Put them together. Now let's compress that seam a little bit. Same thing on the inside. Then I'll get a sponge and I'll get it wet. And then squeeze it out so it's not super drippy. I'm going to run that sponge and just rotate. Run that sponge along here with some pressure. And this is going to help join everything together. It's going to help soften this foot. Give it a nice shape. Make it real even. Check it. See if it's level. That side needs to come down a little bit. Not too bad. Check this side. So this needs to come down a little bit right there. Smooth it out again. So one thing that's happening here I'm noticing is that the middle of the bowl is sticking up more than the feet, and you don't want that to happen because two problems if the bottom sticks out more than the feet. One is if it sits on there, it's going to rock. The bowl is going to rock. And the other problem is if you glaze it, it'll stick to the shelf. Nice. Okay, that's relatively level. And then we'll let it stiffen up enough so that we can flip it over and fix the rim, make that rim all pretty. In the meantime, I could work this texture a little more or move on to something else. And then I'm going to work on this edge, and I'm going to pinch it out and make it a little bit thinner. Feels good. A little bit of a hard edge here, and I'm going to take that off with one of my trimming tools. Just carefully taking off that edge. It's kind of sharp right there, so I want to make it not sharp. Not an edge you'd want to put in your mouth, but it will soon be nice and smooth. Go around and just thin this edge out a little bit more, and then I'll work it with the sponge. So I'm just pinching it thinner, and kind of pinching it out, kind of thinning it and bending it out. Feels pretty good. Now I'll get it with a sponge, dip that sponge in the water, squeeze it out so it's not drippy but it is moist, and then spin it, rotate it, and compress and smooth. I'll spend a little more time cleaning it up, maybe work on that texture on the inside just a little bit more, and then check for any flaws on the outside. If there's kind of some scratches or uneven spots there, I'll take a look at that, but almost done. There's a little bit of hard edges in here, but I don't want to mess with it too much. I'll probably do a little sanding once this is bone dry. That's pretty good. I'll flip it over, set it on the rim, leave it loosely covered to dry out a bit, and then probably do some sanding later, and then it'll be ready for the bisque.